All righty. We'll go ahead and get started. I'm sure we'll have some others that will join. And a couple of housekeeping items I wanted to just go through, just so we're sure what's going on in terms of the course. I'll close this off here for a second. Week 11, now, we've already worked, and we have done all of the Excel cases, and there are files there to upload, so make sure you upload those and you've looked at them, etc., so you can get credit for them. It's kind of dumb not to get credit for those. And then we have 13 of those, and we finished with them last week. And now we're going to move into looking at Microsoft Access, okay? And that'll be week 12. And the 15th, I have Access cases. 1, 2, 3, and 4 are due. And we're going to have this week, which is the first, and then next week to work through them. Now, because we have the data admin course that everybody takes, we're going to put our toes in the water maybe a foot, but not jump in the lake. And there's a lot there to look at. So I have some cases, and then I have some old examples that we can just explore some of the initial thought processes about databases and what they're all about. But in truth, in data admin, we'll really go full bore in working with them. Now, that being said, I want to take a look at the textbook and just alert everybody the textbook that we're going to be using for the Access cases. And I'm over here in VitalSource, and this is the book, Microsoft Access 2013 Step by Step. And so when people see me, talk about the Lambert and Cox textbook, it's this textbook. So we've left the Potsy textbook, and we're over now looking at Access. This is Access 2013, but it's not that much of a difference between it and 16, except for you, another $150. So I figured let's stay with the older one, because there's not much. It's about a $75 difference. Now, it's okay. What about student files and all of that? Well, if you go into the files section, okay, you're gonna see the Access files, and you'll see the Access companion content that has the Excel, the Access databases that we'll be working with, and I think we have 6 Access cases. So we're going to do a little bit of work with them, not a tremendous amount, but enough to get us kind of familiar with them and using them. And so we'll be working with those. Now, so that's over in the files section. Now, if we go back to the modules for just a minute, right? And I'd say this also, and let me put a plug in for the digital versions of these texts. Every one of these books that I use for the different courses I teach can be gotten and then loaded, and can be gotten loaded up in VitalSource, which I like, or you could do it through Kindle, whatever. I like VitalSource. I like a digital textbook. The simple reason I can search for stuff, it's there. I don't have to lug a bunch of books around and all of that. And if you've seen me pulling my beast of burden little thing with my little wheeler, that I've learned I've come to the realization that it's time to stop the clowns, or whatever that song is, call in the clowns. Okay, so that's the textbook, and we'll go in here and we're going to take a look here at the resources for the Microsoft Access cases. Okay. and we'll download them. And you'll see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cases. Now, as I did with Access, all right, I'm going to look. We'll start this first column. What are the business problem? What business problem and DB skill are we trying to build or work with? Okay, and I have an example file, and this is from some previous cases I've worked with that the data are fully fleshed out. I've added a few bells and whistles, and so I show you that. Then we have an example, and then we have a file from the Lambert and Cox text. And for example, for Access Case 1, it's Garden 01, and that's out of pages 28 to 43 in the textbook and 74 to 89. Now, again, the Lambert and Cox book is designed to give you some context, okay, and to look at some of the steps they say will do this. And I'm fine if you want to try to go step by step by step and follow. I have no problem with that. I will go in and take a look at it, all right, and try to work through a key of it or work it while we're here in class, and then that's pretty much it. Because as I said before, we have a data admin class where we will really make you powerful users of databases, and that will be a piece for you at least through next semester, where you'll have a very solid, very real competitive advantage coming out of school versus other business students who'll be out there looking for jobs as well. I can tell you that everybody knows how to spreadsheet, but few people who come out of school, even business schools, let me put it like this. There's no business school anywhere that has the series of courses we have, the BISS series. And so when you leave here, you have the skills of a business analyst or the beginning skills of one, which puts you on a completely different plane than people coming out of other schools. They may be able to do spreadsheets, but they want to understand technology as well, and they certainly want to understand database technology, which is really now coming into its own. And the only way I know to give you any context for all of it is this. Back in the days when I was doing consulting and I was working with companies that were doing mergers and acquisitions, I was on the cash flow team. And our job was to say, if these two companies come together, okay, will they have the cash flow? Will they generate the cash flow necessary to pay off any venture capitalists, okay, that have used money to buy out the other company, or to pay for any a debt that's been accrued? When two companies, when companies merge, somebody always is the dominant partner and wants to get paid. So they'll say, okay, well, yeah, my stock's selling at $900 a share, but boy, my shareholders really deserve another $400 or $500. So you cough up, $500 million. Or you get, some of these companies now have what they call a poison pill provision, where if someone comes in and offers you, let's say your stock is trading, that whatever someone comes and offers you at the trading price, you are required to demand 3 times as much as they offer you. And this is to keep the company in the hands of the shareholders. Managers get in on this too. And about 80% of all mergers and acquisitions never work. They fail. And the reason they fail has nothing to do with the money part. It has everything to do with the culture of the two companies, okay? And that's all it said. But when we were doing those, we could run a scenario, and we'd usually do a 5 to 6 year time horizon. And so we could do a cash flow scenario, and it might take us 3 months to do, I don't know, maybe a dozen, maybe 20 scenarios. When I was leaving and Microsoft Excel was really coming into its own as a product, we could do 150 to 200 simulations within a month. And we could, I'm talking 100 to 200 simulations of 1,000 or 2 or 4 or 5,000 data points that we'd stick into for key variables and simulate what might happen. And so it said, and at that point, things really took off because people could get those insights in the data faster. We're coming into our own in the same way with high speed computing, ubiquitous devices, and databases that are more powerful than anything anybody imagined. Now, Microsoft Access is a good model to learn about databases because it's kind of the grandmother of them all. When Microsoft Corporation designed Access, they figured, well, there's going to be a few people out there that want to, use a database to keep track of their recipes, or they never imagined that there would be such a demand for the product. And then, of course, when that demand hit, everybody else started developing databases and getting into the market, and it just kept going and going and going. And today, databases are really what are changing how we do business. And the reason is we can collect data at a scale we never imagined. We can compute it much faster, and we can use it to get pictures or a sense of patterns happening in our business. Okay, and so we have this tool that lets us get a picture of whole bunches of data points, and allows us to see and make predictions about where things are headed in an industry or for your company or whatever, because we can store the data. The other is just simply market intelligence, business intelligence data that we can get about the environment. And we have so many different ways to collect, data. Everything from location data to data now that's embedded in products, to things like recommendations on Yelp, to things like recommendations on Facebook, all of what we call unstructured data. And we spend a lot of time now taking data that's unstructured, like tweets and stuff like that, and we clean it up and we put it into a table so we can access it and get it. This access that we're going to work to Access 213, for example, 25 years ago was the state of the art. Okay, and we have database systems now that are so fantastic in what they can pull up and what they can pull together, it would boggle your imagination. Think about this for a minute, that Facebook has 2 billion users, and they can handle all of that data because Facebook is really nothing more now than a database, and you and I are the product. Okay, and we'll see that when we enter data into a database, we have a thing called a form, and that just makes it easier for us to put the data in. And when Facebook can collect all of that information, or they can sell it to somebody like Cambridge Analytica, okay, and change a whole election, or they're called now to police all these countries where crazy people will post hate speech and stuff, like the Myanmar Republic, where they basically had all these crazy people who decided that the world would be better if they killed every living Muslim in that country. And so they had what they called an ethnic cleansing, which is a very, an ethnic cleansing is a real nice way to say, I'm going to go into a neighborhood, and anybody who's a Southern Baptist, I'm going to shoot them in the head, cut them apart, burn their house down, and if they don't leave, then I will hunt them down and make sure I kill all of them and we put them in a mass grave. That's kind of how it works. Now, we shouldn't be too smug about that as Westerners, because we had a little incident that occurred in a place called Bosnia, where we had some ethnic cleansing of Christians and Muslims and people who decided, and sometimes in India and Pakistan, they had problems between Hindus and Buddhists. And a gigantic database like Facebook collects so much information, it's hard to even fathom. Once you kind of work your way around access, you're going to understand most, if not all, databases and how they operate. But we just want to get your toe in the water and kind of get you thinking about them so that you can see what we can do with them. So we've got this one that tonight that we'll work with, which is garden number 1. Okay. Now, before we do that, I want to go back into the files section. All right. And you should have you go ahead and downloaded the Access Companion. And I want to find the analytical cube again. And we talked about this before. The analytical cube says, I've got some dimensions about my company, the products I sell, the retailers that sell the products. I've got information about dates. I've got information on sales volume. So I can move away from just a flat kind of XY environment where I'm working in a flat, what we call flat screen in Excel, and I can literally make the data multidimensional, okay? And that's why if you and I go out and look for fishing tackle tomorrow, within hours there will be banner ads trying to sell us fishing tackles or sporting goods, banner ads telling us about trips we can take, etc. ad infinitum. If you don't believe me, go out and look for a product and you'll see. Probably the 3 greatest databases in the world are owned by Facebook, Amazon Web Service, and Walmart. You may or may not remember Ms. Turnage, who worked here, but Nicole worked for Walmart, and she worked there in their headquarters for IT. And the environment there was so intense that if they had a problem somewhere, everybody in her unit went to a war room, what they called a situation room, and they fixed that problem, and nobody went home till it was fixed. Because Walmart understands they are moving a lot of stuff over a lot of distance to a lot of people, and it doesn't matter to you and me that they didn't have my cherry vanilla flavored toothpaste with vodka as a rinse. I screamed at the manager of the store that it wasn't there, although that product is pretty rare. And if you walk into a Walmart and look around and go, how do they get all this stuff here? Well, databases. And so databases have really become a key component for doing business. And it's important to understand them, okay? More than anything, we don't want you to be geeks, but we do want you to understand what they can do for you. I'll give you a good example. If you have Spotify, when you go into Spotify, if you don't have the premium version, you play a song and then they suggest a song. You play a song and they suggest 18 songs. They're using what we call a recommendation engine, where they're taking what you tell them you like and then they keep feeding you more. Okay? And why? Well, if you're using the free version, they probably get ads. If you're using the premium version like me, I can't take that. I go and find the stuff I want. I pay the $10 a month. I'm a sucker. I understand it, but I want to listen to what I want to listen to. I'm not really interested in experimental hillbilly music or whatever they think I like, they think I like based on that. Amazon is the same way. And if you want to see that, let's go for just a moment and we'll take a look. And I'm going to move this over here for just a moment. And we'll go to Amazon. And when you click in, okay, they've got an event that they're trying to sell you. And then they've got some recommended products for you. All kinds of goodies, early Black Friday deals, home gifts for the holidays. Is it Christmas? I guess it must be. And then the deal of the day. Now, all of these products, now I want to show you something. I just did a search last night just for tables, okay? And I get this. And they're going to bombard me with anything and everything they think that I might want. Here we go. Now, last night I did a quick look at the elephant table, and now I have all kinds of elephant stuff and dolphins, all kinds of things they want to sell me. And that's Amazon is a recommendation engine. You come in and they'll say, well, people who bought that bought this, and on and on and on. But they're also one of the greatest databases in the world. The Amazon Web Services, which is their back office operation, makes more money than they do in the front end. In fact, a lot of governments around the world lease Amazon Web Services databases and space because they can do it cheaper than than trying to find and pay people to do it, because they'll end up hiring a bunch of Amazon people. Walmart is right up there with them just because of the sheer size and complexity that they handle it. Okay, now we'll go back over here, and again, this starts to give us a multidimensional look at transactions that occur. And let's just start to kind of take that cube like a Rubik's Cube and turn that thing one way or the other and just kind of get a look at the data. Okay? And so databases allow us to see some things or discover some things in terms of our company that maybe we wouldn't see if we didn't have the capacity to do the queries. Now, go back over here for a sec and want to leave out of the file, go out of the files area. And, well, I stay in the files area, excuse me. And I wanted to come down and there's a file here called Northwind. Okay, Northwind 2007. All right. This is this is a baby database that Microsoft put out there in 2007 for everybody, saying, okay, if you want to see a template, just like Word has templates, just like Excel has templates, Microsoft has templates, Northwind database is a template in terms of a database. So let's take this thing and download it, okay? And then we'll go take a peek under the hood and see what this thing's all about. I can't emphasize enough that for you and I, understanding these is far more important than you doing programming or anything of that sort. It's the understanding of them. Now, when I go in and I work with folks in some kind of a deal, these days it's usually churches, I ask them a very simple question. What are the 5 things that you need to know about your operation every single day? And they're almost, it gets kind of quiet and they're a little flabbergasted. But I say, okay, tell me, what's your KPI? Key performance indicators. What are 5 things that you have to see on your dashboard if we're going to go this far and create the dashboard, or use the dashboard that's provided by some of your database vendors. And that's a rugged process to walk people through, because they come to realization. They come to this realization that they really have about 85 things they collect. And so they may not quite understand what they're doing, or they may say, gee, we thought we knew our mission, but we're kind of off mission here. Okay? And it prompts some thought processes, okay? And then they erupt in the thing of, who's this stupid college professor out here, and what's he talking about? And here's what usually happens. I go out into the auditorium, especially if it's a big church. I take one of their welcome visitor cards. And it's not a welcome visitor card. It has more items than the United States Census. So they ask these people all kinds of stuff. How could they hear the sermon if they're going to fill out 43 things? I had one of them that had 47 things to ask a visitor to fill out. I'm surprised they didn't say, can we get your blood type, your DNA? Maybe you've got genealogy you can give us. What information do you need at that point? And they said, well, someday if they join, we'll want to have all that anyway. Yes, but right now, your greeters and the people who take this data and the people who are giving you the data don't fill it out. So they'd run reports and they'd end up with all of these empty, null data, and they'd be upset. Well, they weren't thinking clearly, okay? So on the back end of this is the data collection part, all right? Now, flip that to the side of very astute businesses, and let me tell you what happens in a lot of retail outlets, especially some places like Walmart. When you walk in there with your phone has a heat signature. And retailers, there is software out there that a retailer can purchase that will allow them to follow you as you go around the store, or will record your heat signature. How long you stayed at this table, what door you came in, which door you left from, which checkout aisle did you go through, did you pick some stuff up and put it down, did you spend 5 minutes at this bin? And they now start to see a path, your pathway through the store. And they start looking for, is there a similar pathway for people? Can we guide people through the store so they'll buy more stuff? Absolutely. There's a reason that Walmart has all the candy at the front, plus every copy of the National Enquirer, and everybody copies them they get, because they want little kids screaming at their mother to buy candy, okay? And they want, or their parents, and they want people to read some crazy stuff, like Trump was captured by aliens, or some weirdness like that, so they can guide you through your retail experience. And so we have a great challenge in that we can get some incredibly good information for marketing to people, but at the same time, there are privacy issues involved. And how much do you want somebody snooping over your shoulder? And that's something you folks your age are going to have to work out, because the people my age have kind of let the technology take over and go. And when 300 people can sit in a house over on the East Coast of the United States and reach 100 million people and change voting patterns, that tells you how powerful a tool that a database is. And so it's something quite remarkable. Let's open up North Winds for a moment, and we'll see what we're talking about. And again, we're kind of learning about how the car runs, and then click on Enable Content, okay? And you'll see a Northwind login. Don't worry about that. Just click login. And you'll see the dashboard. You've heard me talk about it many times. This is a fairly crude dashboard. And it opens because the manager using it wants to say, okay, what's the status of some of our orders? What's going on with them? And then if I look a little bit to the right, do I need to reorder any inventory? I don't want to run out. Okay. And then I can scroll on over here. Well, how much what's the reorder level? And well, it looks like I need to do some reordering because I'm below a reorder level. And then I have some quick links to inventory, orders, customers, purchase orders, suppliers, employees, shippers, and sales reports. Anything that has to do with a transaction. Okay? Anything that has to do with it. When we hear people talk about business intelligence is, what am I picking up from the environment? And how do I effectively scan the environment, the world I'm in? Number two, how do I establish intimacy with my customer? Okay? And number three, how do I achieve operational excellence? And so business intelligence really has it has two pieces to it, an internal and external. Here in this, in my dashboard here, everything is about sales. Who, what, when, where. Okay? Well, let's close that off here for a moment. And we're going to go down and we're going to take just a tour through the software. Access, like any database, is going to have an L shape. It may be an L that with the L part is on the right, but if you're going to look up, you're going to see the following. You're going to see some type of toolbar, okay? And then you're going to see on the left, or maybe on the right or the bottom, but you're going to see an area where we have the database objects. We have the following kinds of database objects, all right? We have tables, that's where I store data. Queries, those are where I extract data from the tables. Forms, that's where I input data into the tables. Reports, they're what they say they are. We have some things called macros, and I think we did some of those in here where we just simply copied the keys, the keystrokes, and then modules, and that's when you get into some things like Visual Basic for access, and you do some kind of programming, semi-programming using the VBA tool, and we won't do that in here. We're going to stick with the basic meat and potatoes of a place to keep it, the table, a way to extract it, a way to input data, okay, and reports. Those are the big four. Now, when we think about data and we think about information, remember that we're always talking about what we call the wisdom triangle, and that is data, bits and bytes. Information, data that I can use for decision making. Knowledge, information that can be replicated and used over and over in some generalistic ways. And then finally, wisdom. All of the insights I get from knowledge within the most broad context of my industry and a time frame. Okay? One of the most interesting research studies I ever got to take part of was and this was one of the faculty over in business at OU, and I was working my way through school, and I was a grad student, and I did a little bit of work. But he was asked by an oil company they had set up a simulator for super tankers, so that when the things came in, and they had a simulation of the super tanker itself. Now, there's not many people in the world who can pilot a super tanker, and most of the time they're under the radar for a very simple reason. They might get kidnapped, they might get blackmailed, because bad people might say, if you don't to run this thing into the port of New Orleans, we're going to kill your family. So they're under the radar, okay? But they're highly trained people. When you have that much mass, even going 5 miles an hour, it is a tremendous amount of force. Now, he worked with them on one piece of that project as they were working with that company. But the thing that was fascinating to me was how they were trying to get wisdom from the people who had been pilots before. What happened when you were in a storm? How did you handle this part of the journey where there might be some problems with currents, etc.? And they had these people who had piloted these things, and remarkably enough, not all were men. About a third of them were women, which I thought unbelievable. And they had safer records than the men, if you want to know the truth. But they tape recorded them, they asked them questions, and they were engaged in what they called a knowledge management project, because they wanted to take all of those insights and get them captured, so the people who were training could sit down and listen to the stories these people had to tell about what can go wrong, what kinds of things happen, okay? Our military institutes use the same process, case studies, just like you get bombarded by case studies every semester. And not another case study. That's how we try to learn. Medical school, they do case studies. At a hospital, if somebody dies, they have a post-mortem, which means they all get together and say, why did this person die? What happened? Are we to blame, or was it inevitable this person was going to die? Well, a database lets us capture some of that wisdom. Now, there are statistics out there that say that the average worker who leaves the company walks away with about $25,000 worth of information and knowledge. Okay? They just know how stuff works, and they know people, etc. In a knowledge-based industry, a university, a medical school, a software company, it's about $150,000 worth of knowledge walks out the door. Okay? So this databases, knowledge, that's why, other than human beings, the most important and resource in any organization is information. Nothing comes close. I'll give you a very simple example. The estate of Elvis Presley, okay? About 4 or 5 years after his death, I think was worth, including his catalog, his home, everything, about $150, maybe $200 million. Okay? And all I can say is, if you ever get a chance, I went to Graceland just before they really started fixing it up, and so I saw it as it was when he died. They wouldn't let you upstairs. That's where he died, upstairs. But when you went to the house, you thought, it's not this impressive. It was a mansion in 1950, but by today's standards, it was a shack. But he had, his trophy cases and all that, and the place where he was buried, and and my mother was a huge fan of Elvis Presley, and I lived in Cape Girardeau, 150 miles away, and I was destined to take my mother through Graceland, and so we went through Graceland, okay, and all across the street from Graceland, it was a bunch of seedy little shops and all of this. We went through his airplane. It hadn't been cleaned in about 3 years. and his catalog was out there, but except for his death, wouldn't be played. Now, his ex-wife came in, took over, and now his estate is worth probably well over $1 billion. Why does he sell more music today than he ever sold at the height of his career? Why do more people listen to Elvis Presley today than ever when he was alive and at his top? Simple. YouTube, Spotify, all of these music services out here, people, iTunes, these folks in the 1960s who were rockers, who were making all this music, when they started getting paid royalties as people were replaying their music, they started getting rich. Okay? So intellectual property is another one of those examples of the great value. And I think I cannot remember what is the most money that's ever been paid for a music catalog, but I would bet you it was probably the catalog of songs by the Beatles. I would bet you it's the Beatles for sure. And television programming, all of these old movies, that intellectual property, it's information, and it has a value. And boom, all of a sudden, those catalogs, I would say, if you put a valuation today on, say, on Turner Classic Movies, which is a company that just fascinates me. Ted Turner paid $25 million to get all those old movies. They probably spent $50 million refurbishing those movies, where we literally had some of our greatest art that was just vanishing into thin air. And I would bet you that company today, if you tried to buy it, they're going to ask you for $1 billion, and they'll probably get it. So this ties into this notion of a database, because this enables us to get stuff back to people, let information have a use life longer than it ever has before. Well, we've got these access objects over here, and then we have some things, these tables, and let's look at these. These are called dimension objects. These are variables, or they're variables or phenomena related to our business. Customers, employee privileges, employers, inventory transaction types. Let me open this up for a minute. Now, this is a dimension table, because we have 4 ways that inventory is classified. It's purchased, it's been sold, it's on hold, or it's waste. Okay? That way we can categorize it and keep track of it. We might even, if we're running, for example, a FIFO LIFO in terms of our inventory, we might have a coding that says this is LIFO, and so we have valuations placed on it. Who knows? Then we have an inventory transactions. And this gets us to what we call a fact table. These are facts. These transactions occurred. Okay? Now, we have some invoices. Here's another fact table. And notice we usually get who, what, when, where. We at least have the when and how much and that type of thing. But these are facts. There's the order ID, the date of the invoice, the tax, the shipping, the amount due. Here we have order details, and this is another fact table. So what's the point? Well, with fact tables, I usually have numeric data that allow me to do 2 things. One, to analyze things vertically, i.e. the columns. So I'm looking at, say, what's the average unit price? What's the sum of the unit price? What's the average unit price What's the median unit price? What's the standard deviation on our unit price? And then I can come across in rows, and I can do row functions where I can say, okay, I can compare, I can take the quantity times the unit price, and I can get the total amount for that invoice, for that order, which is $1,400 less any discounts, etc. You follow me? Once we start to work, then we're going to be able to also run queries that let me cross-cut that table and treat it like a matrix, a true matrix, and that's when I can start to look for patterns. Right? Now, I've got some order details status here. I'll open that up. And this is just, it's a dimension table. What's the status of the order? So this helps me find out the flow. So when I go into an inventory transactions, all right, I'm going to click on that. Okay. I've got the transaction number, okay, the type of transaction, when it was created, okay, the date, the product ID. So I can start to extract data from that table. Okay? That's the first thing that happens when we work with a database. All right? And we extract. We dig down. You'll hear people say we're data mining. That's exactly what's going on. Now, we're going to move along here and we'll see some more of these. And then we're going to see some more dimension tables dealing with shippers, okay? And then we have some things on strings. These are string data. And you say, what in the world is that? Here is probably some of the first knowing big data you've ever seen. So what do you mean big data? These are just sets of comments, okay? They're strings. A string is a set of characters, numbers. Now, why would I care? Well, if this is stuff that customers have said on Amazon about my product or about my delivery, I want to know. I want to perform a sentiment analysis to figure out, do people hate me? Do they think I'm awful, or do they think we're good? And if you're like me, when you buy anything through Amazon, you get bombarded with emails about, tell us about the product. Tell us about the delivery of the product. Tell us about the packaging. And I understand that seems like a quite dreary exercise to you and an annoyance. But I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to figure out, did they handle the transaction properly? Okay? And they want to know that. And if you look right there, okay, how would I handle this? What would I do? Well, at the end of this course, you're going to do a sentiment analysis. If I'm not mistaken, a sentiment analysis, and you'll do about an app that was offered over, I think, over the iTunes, and you'll get to do it. You get to see how we can try to do all of that. Now, if I'm around past next semester, depending on what I decide to do, if you take management science, we'll build a predictive model that tells me whether or not a tweet is about a certain product or not. And we'll have about an 85 to 90% accuracy to say that tweet's about my product, or the other it's spam. Okay, so we could look at that. Now, as we come down, we see the queries, and click on the customers extended, and let's open it up for just a moment. Okay. Now, when we work with a database, we have some views. Okay. Up here is what we call the results set, or the data view. Now, I can right click it and I can go down the hood and I can look at the design view. Okay? Now, I've got an ID and a short text. This is how these transaction types are handled. The ID, it's a number, okay? The type name is a short text, and it has the properties down here in terms of the field size. Okay, so that's the design here that we've got. Now we'll go back up to the data sheet view, and there we are, okay? And then I want to go back over to customers extended. Now we'll open it back up. It's a little bit different looking critter, but I still have the data sheet view, and then I have the design view. Now I close this off here. And now we'll go down to the design view. Now I want you to notice something. You'll get visual cues from this software just like you will with any software application. I can do my view. I can click through here up at the top of the left-hand corner or down here on the tab. Okay. And we've got that query, customers extended. Now, let's see what we got here. Oh, I don't want to leave the meeting. That's wonderful. Okay. Let me see what I can do here. All right. There we go. Okay. Let's take the strings. Let's close them off. The shippers will close. We're going to close everything. And we're going to go back to this customers extended. I want to see the design view. There we go. I had some of the objects it was working with open, and it wouldn't let me do that. Now, this is what we call the graphic user interface view. Okay? You say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, it's pretty simple. This shows us the object that we're working with, and what we're doing with it. Now, here's the customers table, so that's what we're working with. And here are all of the fields in the customers table. And then we have some statements here. Now, here in this query, all right, we're using some techniques. I'll talk about, actually what we're doing is invoking some functions, and I'll show what we're talking about, okay? One of them is the IIF, okay? Now I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to put it over here in a notepad and come down to the bottom. All right, and you'll see we're doing a search. Now the IIF is keep looking till you find it, and we're looking at the last name, first name, etc. So we're doing a search for all of that information. All right, and the same thing, and we're going to put that in ascending order. The same thing again over here on the contact name, and then everything from the customers table, everything else. And that's how we're going to get the data set up here. And we have the contact name, and then we're going to file it as, then we have the ID. And when we were below there, we were looking at what you'll be seeing when you run queries, etc., the GUI. There's another view, okay, which is the SQL view, and that's the code underneath it. You and I don't like to look, I don't want to spend my time doing it. I would rather be moving the objects around, putting in qualifiers or whatever I need to. In other words, working at this level as opposed to that one. And then we run and we get the result set. Now, let me stop for a minute and say this. Let a database be a database. Let a spreadsheet be a spreadsheet. So if I have this and I want to do some heavy-duty computational lifting, or I really want to work with the data cube, that approach, I'm probably going to take this table and I'm going to export it to Excel, where I can do some things functionally much easier. Okay, now there are some applications out there, for example, like SAS or SPSS, that will allow you to take these data and throw them into an analytical engine where you can do a pivot table, where you can add and subtract and run statistics to your heart's delight, etc., as opposed to having to come into the GUI and write these types of statements and hope you survive, you live to fight another day. So this gives us all the customer's extended information. Look at the employees extended, okay? And we're going to open it up. Same story there. I'll come down to the design view, and there we are, working with the employees table. And notice again, we're using the IIF function, and that's a search function. It says find this and report it. That's all. And then we have the employee's name, and then we get everything else from that table. And when we open it up, there we are. So we have the employees, all right, and the customers extended. Now, is there a connection between these two tables? Well, there's one easy way for us to find out. Click on the database tools, okay? Click on that tab, and you'll see a thing over here called relationships. Click the relationships tool, okay? And what do you see? Well, you see something. You see how these are all related, okay? And that's what it does. Now, did I lose everybody just then? Because I'm not seeing my I'm still recording, appear to be. Okay. Can you guys, I'm hoping they can hear me out there, maybe not. It says I appear to be recording. Great.
See a black screen on yours, not from you.
Okay. All right. I'll find out for soon or not. Now, what I'm going to do a little bit later, because I wanted to cover some of this conceptual stuff, is a little bit later. If we don't do it here, I'll do it in part 2, where I'm going to go through that case. But I wanted to let you see the north winds so you can see what that thing looks like, okay, in terms of its construction. And it's a data warehouse, I guess you could call it that, because it has all the characteristics. It has dimension tables, fact tables, it has queries. It's a place where I can go and extract data from it if I want to do that. Okay? And let's see, I'm going to pitch on myself here for just a second. I want to look at this to see if we're still going, and I guess let's see if I'm still working. Yeah, it says we're recording, but I'm not sure if something happened there. If not, that's okay. We got quite a ways. Okay, and we'll pop this down here. Let's see what else we got. Anybody else? Okay. All right. I'll go back to the gallery view. I guess we're still there. I see everybody. We'll find out. Okay. Now, I think if I am recording before I go any further with this, which has been one of these days with debacle after debacle, what I'm going to do now, and I would encourage you to take a look, some more looks at Northwind, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'll go through in part 2 and take a look at, I'm going to go through part 2 and I'm going to take a look at Access Database 1 and Access Database 2 and talk about and show them what you've got. So I think the better part of Valor says to me, I may or may not be recording, I'm not sure, but I think what I'm going to do here is, let's see the speaker view. All right, get that. No, I'm still here. Okay, all right, well, let me do this. Since it looks like we're still going, which is good. And I'll see if I can manage the participants any. Okay, all right, so we are still functioning. That's, I can cancel that. So I'm gonna shove everything down here for a moment. I'm hoping you could still see all this. I guess I'll find out. Well, let's take a look here for just a minute again at the Northwinds. Now, if you take a gander here, all right, at the relationship tools, this will show you how all these tables are related, and they're related, and you'll see a lot of what we call one-to-many relationships. I have one ID for several people, or I have several people have an ID. They're different and unique. Same thing with privilege. And I can, as I start to pull these out, and I know this is like spaghetti, I start to see the flow of data and consequently the flow of material and money and people throughout the company. So this lets me understand how this is all related. Now, we're going to see that there are things called the star schema where you'll have a set of databases, a set of tables that kind of look like a star. That's one of the more common, more common ways that we design a database, and it's because the information is flowing in some certain points. Okay, order status, and if we shutter this off for just a moment, we can start to see those tables that have just a whole bunch of nodes come in. They're like a network. And we've got shippers, suppliers, orders, purchase orders, inventory, transactions, invoices. You can see how complex this is. Okay? So that's one of the ways that we determine. Now, I'm going to close that, all right? And I'm going to take the navigation pane and come back to display. All right, and I'm going to click on Employees Extended. I'm going to open it up. And then I'm going to click on Database Tools. All right, and I'm going to click on not relationships, but object dependencies. Does everybody see the little thing with the glass? Looks like the glass is the object dependencies. And this will tell me, okay, and I'll squinch this out just a bit, the objects that depend on me. In other words, what other objects like tables, queries, forms draw data from me, okay? And then what objects do I depend upon? And typically, we can tell if there's a large difference between what depends on me versus what I depend upon, that means I'm probably a table. I might be a query. I'm probably a table, and I'm a juncture where a lot of data comes together. Okay? And so when I run a query, I go out in that inventory, in that warehouse, and I grab all that stuff and I bring it forward. So this concept of a data warehouse is an important one, and Northwinds is a kind of a baby data warehouse for all intents and purposes. Now, when I do part two, I'll take access number 1 and 2, and I'll kind of break them apart for you and let you see them, but in a smaller context. But this database here, this is a baby to let you kind of get your feet in the water with understanding how these things are put together. Now, we also have things called forms, and I'm going to go down and find the forms. And forms are nothing more than a device whereby I can input data. Click on the active orders subfolder, okay? And this is a form. Let's click on the customer details. And there's more what you would assume would be like a form. Notice that it has places to input data. Notice that it has a ways for me to customize. Notice that it has, if it has data integrity, it will force me to input the data only in certain ways. So whatever's input, say for example on the business phone, is pre-formatted. How things are put in the fax number, pre-formatted, so that everything's entered uniformly. The state or province will probably have a drop-down menu where I just click on the 2 states. Why? So the data are inputted as efficiently and fully as possible. And if this is anything worth its salt, I'm going to have, for every single one of these, I will require that there be something filled in there. If not, the record won't save. In other words, I don't want any empty or null spaces. I require everything. Okay? Now, what you see in front of you is a very crude version of what we saw when we went to Amazon tonight. And we saw all those JPEGs and all that text and all those hyperlinks and the 2 arrows on the side so we could scroll it across wise, and we can go down if we want to with our browser. And Amazon is saying, okay, I see that you bought, I see that you're at OBU and you bought 6 kegs of beer. You'll need some brats, okay? And we have some specially shaped brats. They're brats that are shaped in the form of a bison. Would you like to order some of those? Of course you would, all right? Then you're going to need some green and gold towels, okay? Because you're having a party, it's going to get messy. And by the way, we're handling the sales of all of your cups, so you can get you some bison cups, on. So the form is designed to input and collect data. And when databases are designed well, they handle transaction data, but they also will start to give you some insights as a person or persons use that form or input that data on a habitual basis. Okay? And like I said, when I do part 2, we'll look at that. Now, this is a sub form, and we'll close this off, okay? And here's the customer list. Here's a form. Now, we also have some forms that will allow us we can create forms that allow us to input data and see what it looks like what it looks like in the table. This is just a way to make it less dreary. Now, the reason that people like you to scan stuff, or they want you to hold, or they're working so hard to where you can do bump technology with a phone to another and trade contact data, or you can hold up your phone and pay and all that. Why do you suppose? Simple. To get the human element of that transaction processing as far removed as possible. So when you go and take your groceries, you put them through the scanner. Now, with radio frequency tags, okay, ARFIDs with radio frequency ID tags, one of these days those will be attached to everything that you're buying. You'll walk through an area. There will be a reader. It'll pick up everything you're carrying. It will create a bill, an invoice, and it will send it to your bank, and the money will come out of your bank. Okay. Databases make all kinds of things possible. And if you look at your phone tonight when you're on the way home, or just look at your phone is now essentially a device that has a number of forms. You press on the form for ESPN to see ESPN. You press on the form for your phone. You press on a form for Amazon. That's those little cute little things, okay? Or you have, what was it, Killer Birds? Was that the one? Anybody even still do those? Angry Birds? Probably somewhere, where they get television once a week. But Angry Birds and whatever gaming app is going on there and being used. Okay, well, folks, I think what I'm going to do is call it a night. And I'm doing so because I'm concerned that I may have messed us up, but I hope not. Okay? And we'll take a look at it now. I want to get this back up here. And I'll try to do it. Well, it's not going to play nice with me. Maybe, I hope we were still recording. And not sure what I did or was done to me. Who knows? I probably did. I'm sure I did it myself. But I'm going to stop the recording if I haven't already, and we'll go from there and see what's going on. Okay? So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. And I would love to know what I did to myself there. And I'll hopefully end the meeting if I haven't done it already. All right, folks, thank you very much. I'm going to call it a night.